First story, broken attachment cycle. I'm in my third year of reconciliation. The first year was nice because the painful confusion that felt like I was going crazy finally lifted as I realized my intuition had been right all along. After a year of trickle truths, my WW shared a major piece of information she'd been hiding. The next year, the second year, was really great as we found out we're having our first child and welcomed him into the world. Then at the end of last year, I found a hidden contact with one of her APs on her phone that had been added earlier that year. She had been disrespecting agreed upon boundaries and living as if none of it had ever happened, and I finally broke down and asked to go through her phone. I found some of the photos, not nude but sexy for sure, she'd been using to send to people during those years before I found out. This pushed me into a dark place for the last 6 months. I did not find any evidence of any communication or nefarious activity happening currently, but it shook me out of my denialism I'd been carrying to avoid facing the reality of how hurt I still am. Here's my current question, I guess. I've learned that she is the dismissive avoidant attachment style, and I was secure attachment. Since this all started, I've definitely shifted to more of an anxious attachment, it seems. With an avoidant attachment WW, it feels like a catch-22. If I ask for reassurance or more communication, it can seem to push her farther away or deeper into herself. This dynamic is at the heart of why she did what she did in the first place. She couldn't handle being so vulnerable and completely seen by one person. So when she got into a dark place and needed support, she outsourced it and compartmentalized her needs. This protected her, in her mind, from the vulnerability required for a long-term intimate relationship. To her credit, she has been putting herself out there more and has become much more open. But if a few days go by and she's back in autopilot, it begins causing triggers to happen with intensity. I don't know what to expect from her or from myself regarding this dynamic, because it seems my needs are her triggers and vice versa. Update. Reminder, transcend toxic cycles. One of the biggest traps of being cheated on is keeping myself out of the victim seat. When we see ourselves as victims, we inevitably justify actions that are harmful to others. Many of us have had to hear our WPs explain and justify their actions based on convincing themselves they were a victim of sorts, rationalizing their actions by believing they deserve it. Our society has sold this ethos of victimhood as cultural currency, and it's the most toxic perspective one can apply to themselves. Only those who see themselves as victims are capable of betrayal, mass murder, and cheating. In a way, narcissism at its core is the inability to shed believing I'm the victim. It's a survival tactic to gain leverage over others and to justify unhealthy behaviors by delusional justifications. This is why the saying hurt people is true. To see oneself as a victim is to become the darkness we are trying to escape. Throughout this discovery and reconciliation process over the last 3 years, I've had to battle against falling into chronic victimhood. Because the truth is, I am the victim in this situation, but I have been and could easily become the person doing harm if I fail to see myself in a humble and honest light. Healing happens when people transcend to say, I'm a victim of wrongdoing, but if I create my identity around that, I'll become the one justifying harmful actions. So I am honest with my hurts and feelings while simultaneously acknowledging my imperfections and need for grace every day. A true narcissist has lost their ability to balance their internal scales of justice back into reality. They're stuck believing themselves to be the victim, even in the midst of some humanity's most heinous acts. Don't allow someone to have such power of your character and destiny. Fight to forgive, heal, and break the cycle of harm. Update. Depression for first time at 39. Yo. My WW and I had our first MC session on Thursday, and then I did an individual follow-up Friday. There have basically been 3D days, and a lot of trickle truth since then, started over 3 years ago. In that time we've had our first son, bought land house, and I've started a new job business. Life is good. The last 6 months have been the first time in this whole process where everything wasn't being swept. Finally, boundaries are being respected and agreements upheld. It took me almost leaving in November when I found the contact of an AP saved in a secret folder on her phone. It broke me when I found that because for a year and a half I thought I was okay, but I was actually in denial about the amount of hurt I'm carrying. Since November I've cried more frequently than ever. As a 39-year-old dude, this is strange. It's cathartic for sure, but it makes me feel weak and broken. I'm so glad we started MC, and WW seems to be truly working with me toward healing now. She's not high in openness like myself, so I'm proud of her for facing the path to healing in a genuine way. All of a sudden I'm fighting depression and feelings of worthlessness that make me sad. She's there to talk when I ask, which is amazing. I've never felt like this before, and it feels strange to be so sad when life is actually going incredibly. I'm so sensitive all the time and I hate it. It's like if anything critical or upsetting is said, it attaches to every single sad experience I've ever had and sells it to me as a story about how much I suck. When I express these feelings, it makes it very difficult for my partner not to get down on herself. The absolute last thing I want, because she is already self-critical about everything. Has anyone else experienced a phase like this during the final stages of reconciliation? Like a deep sadness connected to the rejection and failure to be what my partner needed for so long? Update. When how to stop being triggered. At 35 years old, I'd never once in my life experienced what people refer to as a trigger. I've always been emotionally strong and intelligent. At 39, I've spent much of the last 3 years experiencing the worst symptoms of trauma after discovering my WW's affairs. It's been a hard road, but I'm grateful for our relationship today. That makes it even more frustrating and depressing for me when I have an afternoon life today and get sucked back into the pain seemingly out of nowhere. She's become more transparent. Her technology is an open book. I can see her location and talk whenever I need to. But it sucks to have a day where it feels as painful and scary as it did on day one. Like, how is that fair? The years of trickle truth and gaslighting did a number on me. So if you're a WP reading this, please don't do those things to your partner, ever. The potency of suffering and enduring emotional trauma is more than any human should ever have to endure. Either leave or get honest if you're currently in that situation. We've started making real efforts toward reconciliation over the last 8 months or so. The few years before that we tried to put a band-aid over it and sweep it under the rug. And that worked well until it didn't, and now I'm fighting for my life to be the husband and dad my family deserves. But my heart is broken and it seems like it may never heal. But deep down I know will, so I press forward, even if it means I have to crawl. I just want someone to call that can help. But my person is the one who took advantage of my vulnerability in the past. Not only that, but I don't want to make her feel guilty anymore. Second story. I, 33, accidentally found messages between my fiancé, 30th, and her friend that make it look like they're planning to have sex when they meet up in a few months. What do I do? I've been with my partner for over 10 years. We've always been very happy together, never any real issues. We live alone in our own house, and we are both avid gamers, with PC desk setups in a corner of our living room each. For the last year plus she's been working night shifts, so when she's off work she's up all night on her PC while I'm asleep. She has one particular friend she made online a year or two ago, a male friend from elsewhere in the country she met via an online game. Now I've never had any issue with her having male friends, far from it. I've always felt very secure. Even when she told me a while ago that her group of friends, including this guy, frequently have quite smutty discussions, talk about their sexual preferences, fantasize about fictional characters, etc., etc. Not an issue for me at all. It's all discussions, chatting, venting, etc. More recently I've noticed her referring to this online friend in new ways, using Japanese words like anata, my dear etc. or Oni-chan, big brother. We both enjoy anime, and have made vague attempts at learning the language in the past, so I know what these mean of course. And I know she has a particular liking for hentai, or pornographic comics animation. It caught me off guard at first, but told myself it wasn't an issue. We're still happy together and she's still as affectionate as the day we got together with me. One last background bit of note, over the last couple of months she's been planning a weekend trip later this year. Just her mom and her sister. They're going to where this online friend lives, and she's going to meet him in person for the first time while they're there. She discussed this with me beforehand, and knowing they were good friends and not having any concerns at all, I said I was fine with it. She doesn't get to see her mom and sister very often as they live a fair distance from us, whereas we live quite close to my mom, so I see her fairly often. So I understand wanting some time just with them, as well as taking an opportunity to meet a friend. Background out of the way, to the reason I'm concerned. Last night, it was a fairly normal night at home. She wasn't working, so we are both in the living room, playing our games at our desks, having snacks, etc. While she's in the bathroom, I get up to take a few dishes through to the kitchen, and as I always do, go to her desk to get her dishes too, which is when I noticed her messages to her friend open on her screen, on some pretty intense erotic role play. I wasn't expecting to see that she was doing this while I was in the room, and for the first time I got a little concerned, which led to me sitting down and scrolling back through their messages. And earlier that same night, they had been discussing fantasies about what to do when they met up. Things like him asking if another friend of his could come along, and her replying, "I want Oni-chan all to myself." His response was along the lines of, "Oh, and what would you do when you get me all alone?" And then they got into what I think is pretty hard to misunderstand, graphic detail. "I want to snuggle up and cuddle," in a way open to more possibilities. If my wandering hand found a tent, I'd keep wandering. It went on in this kind of vein, eventually getting quite explicit about what she likes and what she wants to do to him, before she then said they should stop as it's a shame he's not gone to bed yet. This being just before she went to the bathroom and I came over to her desk. So now I'm sitting here in the daytime while she's asleep, a bit shaken up and unsure what to think or do. I know I shouldn't have scrolled back through her private messages, but the fact she was talking about this with him, while I was right there, has really upset me. I wasn't aware she was in any way unsatisfied. Hell, even last night, the same night. Earlier on, she was her usual playful self, coming up to me demanding cuddles, kisses, general affection, etc. But if I confront her about it, she could, quite justifiably, say I was invading privacy by reading the messages, despite what she was doing in them. My feeling bad about reading it is conflicting with my need to ask her what the fuck is going on. That rambled on a bit longer than I intended. I'm still pretty riled up. Thank you for reading, anyone who read it all. Third story. Faker is over. I know my previous posts had a lot of you worried. Basically, I was obsessive over RNWW was not committed. I came back 3 days after D-Day. She didn't know what it was like to be without me, so I got desperate to control R, to pressure her into putting the work in. Desperate to heal my pain by fixing our bond. And she did not prioritize R over other responsibilities. A big difference between fixing our marriage and healing the betrayal. It was infuriating, and it was eroding me away, and we were both incredibly toxic. Things hit a breaking point. I spiraled hard, drunkenly screamed at her for hours, started vomiting blood. I thought I was 1 or 2 spirals away from becoming a danger to myself. She demanded space. I agreed. Our counselor recommended we use my work week to do a trial run at taking space. Only good morning and good night texts. The weekend leading up to it, we were intimate 4 times. We suck at taking space. My first day at work, she sends me an "I miss you" text. I responded because I was under the mindset of matching her energy and commitment. Taking a step back, catching my breath, focusing on me and not the marriage. My second day at work, she calls me. I answer. She says, "I miss you. I miss talking to you," so we talk on the phone for a bit. That evening she sends nudes. Again, we are horrible at space. My third and last morning, she calls me. Tells me she thinks she needs more time. That she was so busy, she didn't have time to think about it. I feel strung along. Like all her efforts were to just keep me on the hook while she made her mind up. I tell her as much. It's always the inaction that bothers me. Many homework assignments neglected during fake are, so now I am taking control of space. I am taking my kid and visiting my family. No contact outside of her talking with the kid and emergencies, co-parenting logistics. If she's too busy to think about a commitment to I remove every obstacle I can. If she doesn't know what it's like to lose me, I will show her what co-parenting will look like when she does. I told her that I currently have an open acceptance of she can end space at any time by telling me that she made her decision. There is no time limit on the space, but that open acceptance won't be there forever. And I will inform her when it's off the table. Fourth story. I can't tell if she's cheating or I am just insecure crazy. My wife and I have been married for 8 years and have 2 kids together. We both have good jobs and own our home. I have made mistakes in our relationship for sure. Not cheating, but things I've needed to work on that I know has caused strain in our relationship. Over the last year I have really tried to be the best husband anyone could be. I took over way more of the house duties, sent flowers for no reason, went to therapy, and scheduled regular date nights. Something has seemed off though. With all of the effort I've been putting in, I expected the relationship to grow back to where it once was. She just seems disinterested and going through the motions. Our sex life has kind of slowed down, or she seems to do it as a duty to satisfy me rather than something she is actually interested in. One day I snooped through her phone and found some memes she had shared with her girlfriends. They were about all the horny text messages in her phone after she died and having your best friend know your passcode so they can wipe your phone before your family sees it. The responses were like, "Change your passcode, girl," and "Yeah, I will definitely handle that for you." One day I decided to stop into her work unannounced, and one of her male co-workers that she talks to frequently looked at me like he had seen a ghost. My wife was also shocked to see me, and was overly affectionate and lovey with me that night when she got home. It stirred up a lot of suspicion in me that I just can't shake. She's made little comments about being a smart criminal and just things that feel like they are hinting that she leads a double life. I've tried to ask her if everything is good between us, and if there is more I can provide in the relationship. And her answer is always very short: "No, everything's fine." I decided to look through her text messages and it is totally clean. Her socials are clean too, other than those strange "wipe my phone" type jokes she makes with her friends. I decided to also buy a voice-activated recorder and a GPS tracker for her car. I've only had it in there for a couple of days, but I'm starting to doubt my suspicions a little now and wonder if I'm just being crazy. I can't shake the suspicion and feeling that something is off, but I can't find anything to prove otherwise. I'm either just a crazed insecure stalker, or she's 12 steps ahead of me on her secret games. I'm going to keep recording and watching the GPS for a few weeks, but has anyone ever been wrong about their suspicions? I keep hearing always trust your gut, but could my gut be way off? I just want peace of mind and to stop feeling the way I do one way or another. Any advice is appreciated. Fifth story. I am heartbroken. So my husband and I have been struggling the past couple years. I had an emotional affair 5 years ago, and this past year he went off and had multiple of his own. One was to get back at me, but the second woman became way more. He's told me he has feelings for her. I guess they have a bunch in common. We've thrown out divorce multiple times, but he always told me he wants to be with me and doesn't want that. But he's been in a mental crisis, suicidal, so IDK if he's actually saying what he means. Told me he doesn't think he can be happy without this woman, and he's never gonna be the person he was with her. I told him I would walk away so he could be with her. I'm tired of fighting for someone who doesn't love me. He said he can't be with her because she's with someone else. It's been like 2 weeks since things ended between them. He also told me weeks ago that he wanted to end things with her. IDK, what to do? I'm so conflicted. I think I want a divorce, but I keep waiting for him to snap out of it.